I need you to come to the hospital. Right now. The line went dead before I could answer, and I just stared at my phone like it might explain itself. Hello? I said, even though I already knew no one was there. My chest felt tight, like something inside me had been pulled without warning. Great, just great, I muttered, grabbing my keys and heading out into the storm. Rain slammed against my windshield as I drove, and the wipers barely kept up. Why me? I said out loud, gripping the steering wheel harder than I needed to. Who even calls like that? Thunder cracked above me, loud and sudden, and for a moment it felt like the sky itself was splitting open. Just get there, Lucas, I told myself. Go see what this is and leave. But deep down something didn't feel right. Something felt familiar. By the time I reached the hospital, I was soaked from running through the rain, my shirt clinging to my skin as I pushed through the glass doors. Excuse me, I said to the nurse at the desk, trying to catch my breath. I got a call. Someone told me to come here. She barely looked up. Name? Lucas Bennett. She typed for a second, then paused. Emergency wing. Room 214. Thanks. My shoes squeaked against the floor as I walked down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. This is stupid, I whispered to myself. I should have stayed home. But then I saw her and everything inside me just stopped. No, the word slipped out before I could control it. Lucas. Her voice hit me harder than the thunder outside. Emily Carter. I hadn't heard her voice in what felt like a lifetime, but I would have recognized it anywhere. She stood a few feet away, her hair messy, her eyes red like she'd been crying for hours. She looked smaller somehow, like the confidence I remembered had drained out of her. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. I called you, she said, taking a step closer. I let out a short laugh, dry and empty. You called me? That's funny. Lucas, please, no, I cut her off, holding up my hand. You don't get to say my name like that. She froze, her lips parting like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. You disappeared, I continued, my voice steady but cold. No explanation. No closure. Nothing. And now you drag me here in the middle of the night. I didn't know who else to call, she whispered. That's not my problem. She flinched, and for a second I almost felt something. Almost. Please, she said again, softer this time. Just listen. I crossed my arms, forcing myself to stay calm. You've got 1 minute. She looked down at her hands, which were shaking. Daniel's inside. I blinked. Daniel? I repeated slowly. Of course he is. He's hurt, she added quickly. And? I asked. And I don't know what to do. I stared at her, trying to understand what I was hearing. So you thought what? Call Lucas? The guy I left behind. It's not like that. Then explain it to me, I said, stepping closer. Because it looks exactly like that. Her eyes filled with tears. I was scared. You weren't scared when you walked away from me. That's not fair, she said, her voice breaking. I laughed under my breath. Not fair. Emily, you don't get to talk about fair anymore. She wiped her face quickly, like she didn't want me to see her cry. I didn't come here to fight. Then why did you call me? I asked again, slower this time. She looked at me, really looked at me like she was trying to find something she lost. Because you're the only one who ever cared about me without expecting anything back. That made me pause just for a second. Then I shook my head. You lost that the moment you walked away. I know, she said quietly. I messed up. That's an understatement. I thought I was choosing a better life, she continued, her voice trembling. I thought Daniel could give me everything I needed. And now? I asked. She glanced toward the room behind her, her expression tightening. Now I see what it cost me. I followed her gaze, then looked back at her. So what? You want me to feel bad for you? No, she said quickly. I didn't know where else to go. You had options, I said. You just didn't choose me. I didn't want anyone else, she whispered. Then why me now? I pressed. She hesitated, then said softly, because I knew you'd come. That hit me harder than I expected, and I looked away for a moment, trying to steady myself. You don't get to rely on me anymore, I said quietly. I'm not asking you to fix anything. Then what do you want? She swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. I just needed someone who wouldn't judge me. I let out a slow breath. You picked the wrong person. You were never like that, she said. That was before you broke me. She stepped closer, close enough that I could see every tear in her eyes. You've changed. Yeah, I said. I had to. Because of me. Don't flatter yourself. But she didn't move. You're calmer now, she said. Stronger. I stayed silent. And it scares me. Good, I replied. Lightning flashed again, lighting up the hallway for a split second. The storm outside was still raging, just like everything inside me. Lucas, she said softly. What? She took a deep breath, like she was about to say something that mattered. I need you. I didn't answer. I know I don't deserve to say that, she continued, her voice shaking, but I don't have anyone else. That's not my responsibility. I know. Then why are you saying it? I asked, my voice low now. She looked at me, her eyes filled with regret I had never seen before, and whispered, because I made a mistake. I remember the exact moment everything started to change, I said quietly, staring at the rain hitting the hospital window. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was small, almost invisible. I let out a slow breath. That's how it begins, right? Emily didn't say anything, but I could feel her listening. You met Daniel Carter? I continued, my voice steady but heavy. At first you said he was just a client. Just someone important. I laughed softly. I believed you. I shook my head. I believed everything you said back then. I could still see it clearly. You started coming home late, I said. And when I asked, you'd smile and say, work was busy, Lucas. Don't overthink it. I glanced at Emily. You remember that? She swallowed but didn't answer. Of course you do, I muttered. You remember everything. You just chose differently. I leaned back slightly, my chest tight with memories. One night I asked you straight, I said. Is there something going on between you and him? I paused, then repeated her words. You're being insecure, Lucas. Not everything is about you. I clenched my jaw. That's what you said. Emily whispered, I didn't mean, don't, I cut her off. Don't rewrite it now. I looked down at my hands. You started changing after that. The way you talked to me, it wasn't the same. I let out a bitter breath. You used to laugh with me. Then suddenly everything I said annoyed you. I looked back at her. Do you know how confusing that was? She wiped her eyes. I was under pressure. We all are, I snapped. But not everyone throws away the people who stood by them. The memory hit harder now. I remember the night it all ended, I said quietly. You walked in, didn't even sit down. My voice dropped. We need to talk, you said. Emily covered her mouth slightly. Lucas, no, I said firmly. Let me finish. I took a breath. I asked you what was wrong. You didn't answer right away. You just looked at me like I was already gone. My chest tightened. And then you said it. I closed my eyes for a second. Daniel can give me a life you never could. The silence between us grew heavier. That was it, I said. No apology. No hesitation. Just that. Emily's voice broke. I was wrong. You were clear, I replied. That's worse. I ran a hand through my hair. Do you know what I did after you left? She shook her head slowly. Nothing, I said. I just sat there. I let out a hollow laugh. I didn't chase you. I didn't call. I didn't beg. I looked straight at her. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew it wouldn't matter. My voice dropped. You had already made your choice. She stepped closer. Lucas, I didn't understand what I was doing. You understood enough to walk away, I said. That's all that matters. The hallway felt colder now. The next few weeks? I continued. I barely slept. Every time my phone lit up, I thought it was you. I smiled faintly without humor. It never was. Emily whispered, I wanted to call. But you didn't. I thought you hated me. I shook my head. I didn't hate you. I paused. That would have been easier. She looked at me confused. Then what did you feel? I answered honestly. Nothing, and everything at the same time. I took a deep breath. I felt empty. Like someone took everything I believed in and just erased it. My voice hardened. And the worst part? I still cared. Emily's eyes filled again. I didn't deserve that. No, I agreed. You didn't. I leaned against the wall slightly. That's when Michael stepped in. She frowned. Michael. Yeah, I said. The guy who actually showed up when things fell apart. I almost smiled. He didn't say much at first. Just sat with me. I looked down. You gonna be okay? He asked. I let out a quiet breath. And I told him, yeah. I shook my head. I wasn't. Emily listened silently. He dragged me out of that place, I continued. Forced me to eat. To work. To move. I glanced at her. He didn't let me disappear. My voice softened slightly. And slowly, I started breathing again. She whispered, "I wish I had stayed." I looked at her directly. "You didn't." Silence again. "You chose a different life," I said. "One where I didn't exist." She shook her head. "That's not true." "It is," I replied. "Because if I mattered, you wouldn't have walked away so easily." Her voice cracked. "It wasn't easy." "It looked easy," I said. "You didn't even look back." She covered her face for a moment. "I was scared." "No," I said calmly. "You were certain." That hit her. I could see it. I straightened slightly. "I hit rock bottom after you left," I admitted. "But I didn't stay there." I looked at her, my voice steady now. "And I didn't beg. Not once." Emily lowered her hands, tears still falling. "I don't know how you stayed so strong." I shook my head. "I wasn't strong." I paused. "I just refused to lose myself completely." Another flash of lightning lit the hallway. "That night," I said quietly, more to myself than to her, "didn't just break my heart, it changed who I was." "I didn't fix myself overnight," I said quietly, leaning against the cold hospital wall. "That's the part people don't talk about." I let out a slow breath. It wasn't some dramatic comeback. It was slow, painful, and honestly pretty boring at times. I glanced at Emily briefly, then looked away. "The day after you left, Michael showed up at my place." I shook my head slightly. "I didn't even open the door at first." I smiled faintly. "He just kept knocking." I lowered my voice. "Lucas, I know you're in there. Open the door or I'm breaking it." I exhaled. So I opened it. I rubbed the back of my neck. He walked in, looked around, and said, "You look like hell." I shrugged slightly. I told him, "I feel worse." I paused. He didn't give me some long speech. He just said, "Get up. We're going out." I looked at Emily. I didn't want to. I really didn't. But he didn't leave me a choice. I crossed my arms lightly. "That's how it started." I continued. He dragged me back into routine. Work, gym, food. Basic things I had stopped caring about. I let out a quiet breath. At first I hated it. I shook my head. "What's the point?" I asked him. I repeated his words. "The point is you don't stay like this." I nodded slightly. That stuck with me. I shifted my weight. A few weeks later my father called. My voice softened. "He doesn't talk much, you know that?" I glanced at Emily. "But that day he said something simple." I looked down. "You can lose people, Lucas, but don't lose yourself with them." I let those words sit for a second. I didn't respond right away, I admitted. I just listened. I looked up again. That was the moment something changed. I took a breath. "I stopped waiting for you to come back." I paused. And I started focusing on myself. Emily's voice came softly. "You really moved on like that?" I shook my head. "No. It wasn't that easy." I looked straight at her. "I still thought about you. Every day." I clenched my jaw slightly. But I didn't let it control me anymore. I continued. I buried myself in work. Took extra projects. Stayed late. Kept my mind busy. I gave a small shrug. It wasn't about success at first. It was about survival. I glanced down briefly. Then one day, I met Sophia. Emily's expression shifted. "Sophia?" I nodded. "Yeah." I exhaled slowly. It wasn't anything dramatic. No sparks. No instant connection. I almost smiled. She just talked to me. I recalled it clearly. "You look like someone who doesn't sleep enough," she said. I let out a small breath. I told her, "I get by." I shook my head. She didn't push. Didn't judge. I looked at Emily. That was new for me. Emily asked quietly, "And you trusted her?" I laughed softly. "No. Not at first." I shook my head. I kept my distance. I didn't want to go through that again. I continued, "But Sophia didn't rush anything." I paused. She didn't try to replace what I lost. She just showed up. I looked slightly to the side, remembering. "You don't have to tell me everything," she once said. "Just don't lie to yourself." I nodded faintly. That line stayed with me. I crossed my arms again. We started talking more. Simple things. Work. Life. Random thoughts. I exhaled. There was no pressure. No expectations. I looked back at Emily. And that's what made it different. Emily's voice was softer now. Did you ever think about going back? I answered honestly. Yes. I didn't hesitate. More than once. I looked down briefly. But every time I thought about it, I remembered how I felt when you left. I lifted my gaze. And I refused to go back to that version of myself. Silence filled the space for a moment. I continued, Sophia never asked me to move faster than I was ready for. I shook my head. She respected my pace. I paused. And slowly, I started trusting again. Emily whispered, that must have taken a lot. I nodded. It did. I took a deep breath. But it wasn't about her fixing me. I pointed lightly to myself. It was about me choosing to heal. I added, Sophia just made it easier. I leaned back slightly. One day Michael looked at me and said, you're different. I smiled faintly. I asked him, better or worse? I repeated his answer. Stronger. I exhaled slowly. And for the first time I believed it. I looked directly at Emily now, my voice calm and steady. I stopped chasing what I lost. I paused. And I started building something real. I took a final breath, letting the words settle. For the first time I wasn't chasing love. I was building a life. I looked at Emily carefully, really looked this time, and the difference was impossible to ignore. You look tired, I said quietly. She let out a weak laugh. That's one way to say it. I tilted my head slightly. What happened to the life you chose? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down at her hands again, like she was trying to find the right version of the truth. It's not what I thought it would be, she finally said. I crossed my arms. That's vague. She took a slow breath. Daniel isn't the way he used to be. I raised an eyebrow. Or maybe he is and you just didn't see it before. She flinched slightly. He's different now. I shook my head. People don't just change overnight, Emily. She looked up at me, her eyes tired. He controls everything. I stayed silent. What I wear, where I go, who I talk to, she continued. Even how I act around his family. I let out a small breath. Sounds exhausting. She gave a bitter smile. You have no idea. I leaned back against the wall. Try me. She hesitated, then spoke again. His father expects perfection. Every dinner feels like an interview. Every conversation feels like a test. I watched her closely. And Daniel? I asked. Does he stand up for you? She shook her head slowly. No, I let that sit for a moment. So you traded freedom for status, I said calmly. That's one way to put it, she whispered. I studied her expression. You used to be so sure. She let out a shaky breath. I thought I was. I nodded slightly. You told me I couldn't give you the life you wanted. Her voice dropped. I know what I said. Do you still believe it? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. No, she admitted quietly. I was wrong. I looked away for a second, then back at her. That must be hard to admit. She gave a faint, broken smile. You have no idea. A door opened nearby and a doctor stepped out. Family of Daniel Carter? She called. Emily straightened slightly. That's me. The doctor walked over, her expression professional but calm. I'm Dr. Hannah Collins, she said. He's stable for now, but he'll need observation. Emily nodded quickly. Can I see him? Not yet, the doctor replied gently. He needs rest. I watched the exchange silently. Is there anything else? Emily asked. Dr. Collins glanced at me briefly, then back at Emily. Just stay calm. Stress won't help him, or you. Emily nodded again. Thank you. The doctor gave a small nod and walked away. I looked at Emily. You look like you're carrying more than just worry. She let out a quiet laugh. I am. I studied her for a moment. So why call me? I asked again. After everything. She looked at me, her eyes searching. Because I remembered how you used to listen. I shook my head slightly. Used to. You're still like that, she insisted. No, I replied calmly. I just learned when to stop. She stepped closer, her voice softer now. You're not angry. Should I be? I asked. She frowned slightly. I expected you to be. I gave a small shrug. I was. A long time ago. She stared at me, confused. So what do you feel now? I thought about it for a second. Nothing that controls me. Her expression shifted, like she didn't understand what she was seeing. You're so calm, she said. That's new. No, I said quietly. That's earned. She looked down again. Daniel wasn't supposed to be like this. But he is, I replied. She nodded slowly. He barely talks to me anymore. When he does, it's about appearances. About what people think. I exhaled softly. Sounds lonely. It is, she admitted. I tilted my head slightly. And yet you stayed. She hesitated. I thought it would get better. I gave a small, knowing nod. It rarely does. She looked at me again. You're not trying to convince me to leave. That's not my place, I said. It never was. She swallowed. You really changed. I had to. I paused. You gave me a reason to. That made her eyes flicker with something deeper. I didn't mean to hurt you like that. Intent doesn't change impact, I replied. She nodded slowly. I see that now. I looked at her for a moment, noticing how different she seemed, not just in appearance but in presence. The confidence was gone, replaced by something fragile. You're not the same either, I said. She let out a small breath. No, I'm not. Silence settled between us again, but this time it felt different. Less tense. More real. Lucas, she said softly. Yeah. She hesitated, then spoke quietly, almost like she was afraid of her own words. You were different. I didn't see it back then. So what actually happened to Daniel? I asked, breaking the silence between us. Emily hesitated, like even saying it out loud would make it more real. It was a business deal, she said quietly. Something went wrong. I frowned slightly. That doesn't explain a hospital bed. She swallowed. There was an accident, after a meeting. A confrontation. I crossed my arms. Let me guess, money, power, ego. She gave a weak nod. All of it. I let out a slow breath. And now everything's falling apart. Yes, she whispered. And his father? She stopped. Robert Carter? I asked. She looked surprised. You know him? I shook my head. I know the type. She looked down again. He blames everyone. Especially me. I raised an eyebrow. Of course he does. He says I distracted Daniel, she continued. That I made him weak. I let out a quiet, almost amused breath. Convenient. She shook her head. You don't understand. He controls everything. The company. The decisions. Even Daniel. I studied her face. And now you're caught in the middle. I'm trapped, she said, her voice cracking. I didn't respond right away. So you called me? I said finally. Why? She looked up at me, desperation clear in her eyes. Because I needed someone who wouldn't turn me into a scapegoat. I tilted my head slightly. Or someone who used to care enough to save you? She flinched. It's not like that. Then explain it better, I said calmly. She stepped closer. Lucas, I made a mistake. I stayed silent. Everything I chose, it wasn't worth it. You realize that now? I asked. After everything? She nodded slowly. I thought I wanted security. A better life. She let out a shaky breath. But it came with a cost I didn't understand. I looked at her. And now you want out? Yes. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I ran a hand through my hair. So what do you expect me to do? She hesitated. I don't know. I gave a small, humorless smile. That's honest at least. She stepped even closer. I needed someone to stand with me. You had that once, I said. You walked away from it. Her eyes filled with tears again. I know. Silence stretched between us. I could feel the weight of everything pressing down again. Do you remember the night you left? I asked suddenly. She froze. Lucas, answer me. She nodded slowly. Yes. I exhaled. You didn't even give me a chance to speak. My voice stayed calm, but the memory burned. You just decided, and that was it. I thought it was the right choice, she whispered. You didn't think about me at all. That's not true, she said quickly. Then what is true? I asked. She looked at me, her voice breaking. I was selfish. I nodded once. That's the first honest thing you've said tonight. She wiped her eyes. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. I looked away briefly. That's how it usually works. She stepped closer again, her voice softer now. Lucas, if I had another chance... Stop, I said, cutting her off. Don't finish that sentence. She went quiet. You don't get to rewrite the past, I added. She lowered her gaze. I'm not trying to. It sounds like you are. I paused. You're not here because you suddenly understand me. You're here because your current life is falling apart. She shook her head weakly. That's not the only reason. It's the main one, I said. She didn't argue this time. I feel like I'm suffocating, she admitted. Every decision is controlled. Every move is watched. I nodded slightly. And you want freedom again? Yes. You had it before. She closed her eyes for a second. I know. My phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the moment. I glanced at the screen. Michael. I stepped slightly aside and answered. Yeah. Where are you? His voice came through immediately. Hospital, I said. With her. There was a pause. Emily? Yeah. He exhaled sharply. Lucas, listen to me. I stayed quiet. Don't go back to what broke you, he said firmly. I closed my eyes for a second. I'm serious, he cut in. You worked too hard to rebuild yourself. Don't throw that away because she suddenly regrets her choices. I glanced at Emily, who was watching me carefully. I know, I said quietly. Do you? He asked. Because this is exactly how it starts. I didn't answer right away. Just remember who you are now, he added. Not who you were back then. I nodded slightly. I'll call you later. Yeah, just think straight. The line ended. I stood there for a moment, my phone still in my hand. What did he say? Emily asked softly. I looked at her. He reminded me of something important. What? She asked. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. That I have a choice. She stepped closer, her voice almost pleading now. Lucas, I'm asking you to help me. I held her gaze, my expression steady. And I'm deciding whether I should. Silence fell again, heavier than before. I could feel the past pulling one way, the present pulling another. I took a slow breath, my mind finally settling. I didn't say what I chose. But for the first time since she walked back into my life, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I took a slow breath and let the silence settle between us before I spoke again. You keep asking for help, I said calmly, meeting Emily's eyes, but you haven't actually told me what you're willing to change. She blinked, caught off guard. I told you. I'll leave all of it. I tilted my head slightly. That's easy to say when everything's falling apart. Her expression tightened. You think I'm lying? No, I replied evenly. I think you're desperate. That hit harder than anything I'd said before. She took a step back. I'm trying to be honest with you. Then be completely honest, I said. If Daniel wasn't in that room right now, would you still be standing here? She hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. I nodded once. Exactly. Her voice shook. That's not fair. It's accurate, I corrected. I kept my tone steady, controlled. No anger. No bitterness. Just clarity. You didn't come back because you suddenly understood me. You came back because your situation collapsed. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. You've changed so much. I told you, I said quietly. I had to. Another pause stretched between us. I didn't fill it. I let her sit in it. Lucas, she said softly, you're being cold? I almost smiled. No, I'm being clear. Before she could respond, footsteps approached from down the hallway. A woman stepped into view, her posture confident, her expression sharp but composed. She looked at Emily first. There you are. Emily straightened slightly. Olivia, I glanced between them. Olivia Carter, she said, extending a hand toward me. Daniel's sister. I shook it briefly. Lucas Bennett. Her grip was firm. I've heard about you. I raised an eyebrow. That makes one of us. A faint smile touched her lips. You handled yourself well just now. Emily looked between us, confused. What does that mean? Olivia didn't answer her directly. Instead, she looked at me. Most people in your position would have reacted emotionally. I used to, I said. Not anymore. She nodded slightly, like that confirmed something for her. Good. Emily frowned. Can someone explain what's happening? I crossed my arms again, but this time it wasn't defensive. It was grounded. What's happening, I said, is that I'm not stepping back into something that already broke me. Emily's eyes filled again. I'm not asking you to go back to that. You are, I replied calmly. Just in a different form. Olivia watched quietly, saying nothing, but her presence shifted something in the room. Lucas, Emily stepped closer again, her voice softer now. I know I hurt you. You did, I said. And I accepted that. I held her gaze. But accepting it doesn't mean forgetting it. She swallowed. People change. They do, I agreed. And I'm proof of that. I paused. But change doesn't erase consequences. Olivia spoke this time, her tone measured. He's right. Emily turned to her. Whose side are you on? Olivia sighed softly. Reality doesn't have sides. I almost smiled at that. Emily shook her head. You don't understand what I'm going through. I understand enough, Olivia replied. Daniel's choices, father's pressure. It's always been like this. Emily looked stunned. You never said anything. Because I learned to adapt, Olivia said. Not expect things to change. I glanced at her. That sounds familiar. She gave me a small nod. It should. Emily looked between both of us, her voice breaking. So what am I supposed to do? I answered before Olivia could. That's not my decision to make. She turned back to me quickly. But you could help me. I shook my head. I could. But that doesn't mean I should. Silence again. Heavy this time. I'm not the man you left behind, I said finally, my voice calm but firm. That version of me would have dropped everything to fix this for you. I paused. This version doesn't. Emily stared at me, her expression cracking. So that's it. That's clarity, I said. Not cruelty. She wiped her tears again, but this time it didn't stop them. I didn't expect this. I know, I replied. You expected the old me. Olivia crossed her arms lightly, watching Emily. You underestimated him. Emily whispered, I thought he'd still care the same way. I answered honestly. I do care. She looked up quickly. Then why? Because caring doesn't mean sacrificing myself again, I said, cutting her off gently. That seemed to break something inside her. She stepped back slowly, like she was finally realizing the distance between us. You really moved on, she said. Yes. My answer didn't waver. She took a shaky breath, then looked at me one last time, her voice barely holding together. If I choose you now, would you take me back? I didn't answer Emily right away. I just looked at her, really looked this time, like I was finally deciding whether she deserved to hear the truth I had kept buried for so long. You want to know something? I said quietly. She nodded, her eyes already filled with fear. I never told you what it actually did to me when you left. She swallowed. Lucas, no, I said softly but firmly. You asked your question. Now you're going to hear my answer. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. The night you walked out, I didn't sleep. My voice stayed calm, but every word carried weight. Not just that night. The next one. And the one after that. I looked down for a second. I kept replaying it in my head. Every word you said. Every look on your face. She covered her mouth, tears already falling. I didn't know. You didn't ask, I replied. You made your decision and disappeared. I lifted my gaze again. Do you know what that does to someone? She shook her head slowly. It makes you question everything. I tapped my chest lightly. My worth, my judgment, my ability to see people clearly. My voice tightened slightly. I kept thinking, how did I miss it? How did I not see that I wasn't enough? Emily stepped closer, her voice breaking. You were enough. I let out a quiet breath. That's easy to say now. She shook her head quickly. I mean it. You didn't mean it back then, I said. And that's what mattered. I continued. I stopped trusting myself after that. I glanced away briefly. Every decision felt wrong. Every memory felt fake. I looked back at her. Because if what we had wasn't real, then what was? She wiped her face, struggling to breathe steadily. Lucas, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't undo what happened, I said. It just acknowledges it. I took another breath. I remember sitting in my apartment, staring at my phone, waiting for you to call. I gave a small, empty smile. I convinced myself you would. That you'd realize you made a mistake. Emily whispered, I wanted to, but you didn't, I said. And every day you didn't, it hurt less and more at the same time. She frowned slightly, confused. What do you mean? The pain faded, I explained, but the damage stayed. I stepped slightly to the side, giving myself space to speak without feeling trapped. I stopped being the person I was with you. I paused. The guy who believed in things. Who trusted easily. My voice softened. That version of me disappeared. Emily's voice cracked. I didn't mean to do that. Intent doesn't change outcome, I said again. I looked at her directly. You didn't just leave me, Emily. You left me questioning who I was. She broke down completely now, her shoulders shaking as she cried. I didn't know it was that bad. Of course you didn't, I replied. You were too busy building a new life. She tried to speak but couldn't get the words out. I continued, not raising my voice, not losing control. I had to rebuild everything from scratch. I gestured lightly. My routine. My confidence. My sense of self. I shook my head slightly. That doesn't happen overnight. She whispered through tears, I wish I could take it back. You can't, I said simply. And I'm not asking you to. There was a quiet shift nearby, and I noticed a nurse standing a short distance away, pretending not to listen but clearly aware of the conversation. I lowered my voice slightly but I didn't stop. I don't hate you, I said. Emily looked up, surprised. I thought you would. I shook my head. Hate would mean you still had control over how I feel. I paused. You don't. She took a shaky breath. Then what do you feel? I thought about it for a moment. Clarity, I said finally. I see things as they are now. I added, and I see who I became because of it. She nodded slowly, still crying. You're stronger. I am, I agreed. But not without scars. I tapped my chest again lightly. They're still here. Just quieter. Silence settled between us, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy with everything that had finally been said. Emily wiped her face again, trying to steady herself. I didn't realize I destroyed so much. I looked at her one last time, my voice calm but final. You didn't just leave me, you erased who I was back then. I didn't answer Emily's question right away. The silence stretched just long enough for her hope to start fading on its own. Lucas, she said softly, her voice fragile. I looked at her, steady and calm. You're asking the wrong question. She blinked. What do you mean? I was about to respond when I heard a familiar voice behind me. There you are. I turned slightly, and the moment I saw her, everything inside me settled. Sophia, I said, my voice softer without me even trying. She walked toward me with calm, measured steps, her expression gentle but confident. I was starting to wonder if you got lost, she said with a small smile. I shook my head faintly. Just handling something unexpected. She glanced at Emily briefly, then back at me. I can see that. There was no tension in her voice, no judgment, just quiet awareness. Are you okay? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, I am now. Emily looked between us, confusion written all over her face. Lucas, who is this? I turned back to her, my expression steady. This is Sophia. I paused for a second, then added clearly, my wife. The words landed heavier than anything I had said all night. Emily froze. Your wife. I nodded once. Yeah. She stared at Sophia, like she was trying to understand something that didn't make sense to her. You're married? She asked again, her voice barely holding together. I am, I said calmly. Sophia stepped closer to my side, not possessive, not defensive, just present. Hi, she said gently to Emily. I've heard a little about you. Emily blinked, caught off guard. You have. Sophia nodded slightly. Only what matters. There was something in the way she said it, calm, secure, that shifted the air completely. Emily looked back at me. You didn't tell me? I raised an eyebrow. You didn't ask. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I didn't think, exactly, I said. Sophia glanced at me briefly, then spoke again, her tone still soft. Lucas doesn't talk much about the past. Emily swallowed. I can see why. I felt Sophia's presence beside me, steady, grounding. She didn't need to say much. Just being there said enough. We were just talking, I said quietly. About choices. Sophia nodded. That sounds important. Emily let out a shaky breath. I didn't know he moved on like this. Sophia tilted her head slightly. Like what? Emily struggled to find the words. Like stable. Like happy. Sophia smiled faintly. He worked for that. I glanced at her, a small, genuine smile forming. We both did. Emily looked at us, her expression shifting from confusion to something deeper. You seem different with her, she said quietly. I didn't hesitate. I am. Sophia didn't interrupt, didn't question, she just stood there, trusting me to speak. This isn't about replacing anything, I added. It's about building something new. Emily's voice trembled. And you love her? I met her gaze directly. Yes. There was no hesitation. No doubt. Just truth. Emily looked like she was trying to process it, but the more she did, the harder it seemed to hit her. I didn't think you'd get here, she admitted. Neither did I said honestly. Sophia glanced at me with a soft expression. But you did. I nodded slightly. Because I stopped chasing what I lost. Emily looked down, her hands trembling again. And I lost what I didn't understand. Sophia's voice was gentle but clear. Sometimes people only see value after it's gone. Emily didn't argue. She just stood there, quiet, absorbing it. I shifted slightly, turning more toward Sophia now. You ready to go? I asked. She nodded. Whenever you are. I looked back at Emily one last time. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said. Take care of yourself, I told her calmly. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with something that wasn't hope anymore. You really moved on, she said softly. I nodded. I did. Sophia's hand brushed lightly against mine, and without thinking, I held it. It felt natural. Easy. Real. Emily noticed. Of course she did. That was the moment everything became final. No words could change it. No regret could undo it. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. I just stood there, holding Sophia's hand, knowing I had already chosen the life I wanted. The hallway felt heavier than before, like everything that needed to break was finally starting to crack. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there beside Sophia, her hand still in mine, steady and warm. Lucas? Emily's voice came out weaker this time. I looked at her, calm as ever. What now? I asked quietly. She hesitated. Daniel's condition. It got worse. I didn't react. That's unfortunate, I said. She blinked like she expected something more. That's all you're going to say? What do you want me to say? I replied. That I'm sorry? That I care. I shook my head slightly. I don't have a role in that situation anymore. She looked down, her shoulders dropping. His father is losing control, she added. Robert Carter? I asked. She nodded. He's blaming everyone. The staff. The company. Me. Sophia stayed quiet beside me, but I could feel her presence anchoring me. That sounds like him, I said calmly. Emily let out a small, broken laugh. You were right about everything. I didn't respond immediately. No, I said after a moment. I just saw things differently. Olivia stepped closer, her expression serious. It's worse than that, she said. I looked at her. What do you mean? The company is unstable, she replied. Daniel handled most of the operations. Without him, everything's slipping. Emily closed her eyes briefly. And Robert is panicking. I nodded once. Power without control tends to do that. Olivia glanced at me. You're surprisingly calm about all this. Why wouldn't I be? I asked. None of this is my life anymore. Emily looked at me again, something shifting in her expression. That's the part one don't understand, she said. You're not angry. You're not bitter. I said simply. But I didn't stay there. She swallowed. I thought you'd want to see this happen. I shook my head. That's not who I am. Sophia finally spoke, her voice gentle but firm. He doesn't need revenge to feel whole. Emily looked at her, then back at me. So this is it? She asked quietly. This is how everything ends? I took a slow breath. Things ended a long time ago, I said. You're just seeing it clearly now. She nodded slowly, like the truth was finally sinking in. I thought I was choosing something better, she admitted. Something bigger. Olivia crossed her arms lightly. Bigger isn't always better. Emily let out a shaky breath. I see that now. I looked at her, not with anger, not with regret, just clarity. You chose what you valued at the time. She whispered, and I lost what mattered. I didn't argue. There was no need. Silence stretched between us again, but it wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was final. Daniel might not recover fully, Olivia said quietly. Emily's head dropped slightly. I know. And even if he does, Olivia continued, nothing will be the same. Emily nodded. It already isn't. I glanced at Sophia briefly, then back at Emily. Life has a way of balancing things out, I said. Not because it's cruel, but because choices have consequences. Emily looked up at me, her eyes filled with realization. This is karma, isn't it? I shrugged slightly. Call it whatever you want. I paused. I just call it reality. She let out a quiet breath, almost like she was accepting something she had been avoiding for a long time. I thought I could have everything, she said. Love, status, security. You had a version of that once, I replied. She nodded slowly. And I didn't see it. Sophia squeezed my hand gently, a silent reminder of where I stood now. Emily noticed. Of course she did. You're happy, she said softly. I didn't hesitate. Yes. That single word seemed to hit her harder than anything else. She looked away, her eyes filling again. I never thought I'd lose you like this, she whispered. You didn't lose me, I said. You let me go. She closed her eyes, letting the truth settle. Olivia stepped back slightly, giving the moment space. I think you both said everything that needed to be said, she added quietly. I nodded. Yeah. I turned slightly towards Sophia. We should go. She nodded. Okay. I looked at Emily one last time. There was nothing left to fix, nothing left to argue. Just an ending that had already happened. Take care of yourself, I said calmly. She didn't respond right away. She just watched me like she was trying to memorize something she knew she couldn't keep. I turned away, walking forward with Sophia beside me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. But I knew she was still standing there, watching, finally understanding what it meant to lose something that wasn't coming back. The rain had stopped by the time I stepped outside. I paused for a second, looking up at the sky like I needed to confirm it was real. It's quiet now, Sophia said softly beside me. I let out a small breath. Yeah, it is. The air felt different, lighter, like something heavy had finally lifted. You okay? She asked, turning slightly toward me. I nodded. Better than okay. I glanced back toward the hospital doors for just a moment, then looked forward again. I didn't think it would feel like this. Like what? She asked. Peaceful, I said. Not angry. Not relieved. Just calm. Sophia smiled faintly. That means you're done carrying it. I looked at her. I think I am. We started walking slowly, no rush, no pressure. Just moving forward. Was it hard? She asked after a moment. I thought about it. Not in the way I expected, I said. It wasn't about facing her. I paused. It was about facing who I used to be. Sophia nodded slightly. And what did you see? I let out a quiet breath. Someone who gave too much without asking for anything back. I looked down briefly. Someone who thought love meant losing himself. She squeezed my hand gently. That's not weakness. I smiled faintly. It felt like it for a long time. And now, she asked. I looked ahead. Now I see it differently. I paused. It wasn't wrong to care. It was wrong to forget myself while doing it. Sophia didn't interrupt. She just listened like she always did. You didn't lose, she said softly. I glanced at her. No, I agreed. I just learned. We kept walking, the sound of our footsteps quiet against the pavement. Do you feel anything for her now? She asked. I thought about the question carefully. Not what I used to, I said. There's no pull. No need to fix anything. I looked at my hand holding hers. This feels real. Sophia's expression softened. It is. I nodded. That's the difference. I paused. With you, I don't feel like I'm proving anything. You don't have to, she replied. That's the point. I let out a small breath. I spent so much time trying to be enough for someone else. I looked at her. Now I just want to be honest. She smiled gently. And that's more than enough. We reached the car, but neither of us rushed to get in. You handled everything tonight better than I expected, she said. I raised an eyebrow slightly. You expected me to lose control? She shook her head. I expected you to feel something heavier. I nodded slowly. I did, I admitted. At first. I looked back at the hospital again, but this time it felt distant. But it didn't stay. Why not? She asked. I thought about it for a moment. Because I already dealt with it, I said. All those nights, all that silence. That's where the real work happened. Sophia watched me quietly. Tonight was just the final step. I added. She smiled softly. Closure. Exactly. I opened the car door, then paused, looking at her again. Thank you, I said. She tilted her head slightly. For what? For not rushing me, I replied. For not trying to fix me. For just being there. Her smile didn't fade. You did the work, Lucas. I just stood beside you. I shook my head slightly. That mattered more than you think. She stepped closer, her voice calm. We're a team. That's how this works. I nodded, feeling that word settle in a way it never had before. Yeah, we are. We got into the car, and for a moment I just sat there, hands on the wheel, not starting the engine. What are you thinking? She asked. I looked ahead, then back at her. I thought I'd feel different after all this, I said. Like something big would change. And, she asked. I smiled slightly. It did. Just not in a loud way. She nodded. The quiet changes are the ones that last. I started the engine, the sound low and steady. I used to think winning meant proving something, I said. Getting even. Showing her what she lost. I glanced at Sophia. But that's not it. No, she said softly. It isn't. I took a breath. Winning is this, I said. Walking away without needing anything from the past. She squeezed my hand again. That's real strength. I nodded once. It is. I pulled out of the parking lot, the road ahead clear, the storm completely gone. No rain. No noise. Just quiet. Just forward. I didn't look back again. I didn't need to. You ready? She asked. I smiled, my hand steady on the wheel. I already am. I paused for a second, then added quietly, more to myself than anything else. She called me back on the stormiest night of my life, but I had already found my calm.